kind of like saying my goodbyes and stuff. I'm like, I don't want you to see me like this. And picked up a 50 like tablet bottle of acetaminophen and a liter of Aquafina, and walked from Cashwise back to Burger Time and sat there at about 3 o'clock in the morning and took about 20 of them.
It's difficult to see mental illness. Some of the seemingly strongest, happiest, and well-adjusted people suffer with it until...
At that point, something just inside me just snapped. And
Vicky Icago has fought through years of mental illness and 2 suicide attempts. She's been a local reporter full-time and now works with the St. Cloud Area Planning Organization and freelances for a few smaller papers outside the city. Her story is one of thousands more, people just like me and you.
For me, the stigma, I think, is definitely still out there.
More than 40,000 people a year take their own lives in America. Yet, unlike other diseases which are discussed in an open and direct way, when it comes to mental illness, we as a society tend to shy away.
The difference is that we look at mental health illnesses through a different lens.
Dr. Ryan Engdahl is the coordinator of integrated behavioral health for Centricare. He says the mental illness talk is tough.
We don't often, though, talk about depression, for example, in the same capacity that somebody works through an episode and that there may be a point in their life when it comes back again. But, depression has states of remission, just like cancer might, but we talk about it and we treat it very differently.
This way of dealing with mental health has left this arm of our healthcare system more scattered than others.
I mean, we pull from a variety of sources. You get creative in mental health.
Jennifer Reschlow-Dorholt is the Crisis Services Director at the Central Minnesota Mental Health Center. She describes the system using a familiar site in central Minnesota.
We function a bit like silos. And so this program does their thing and they have their internal procedures and each one has kind of their own deal. I think that clients fall through the cracks because of that.
Dorholt says this silo-like nature of the system can make it confusing even for the professionals.
There's a lot to it. And I think even the people who put these rules in place would agree at this point that there's a lot to it.
Minnesota Department of Human Services Assistant Commissioner Claire Wilson says this complexity and fragmentation is due in part to how mental health care has grown up.
Initially we institutionalized people with mental illness, and particularly people who were experiencing severe mental illness. And in the 50s, when we decided that as a country that institutionalization was not the way to treat mental illness, people were released from those institutions, which were either county-run or located regionally. And so services really grew out of those catchment areas.
Its scattered nature can also lead to situations like the one Icago faced, where it took some luck to get timely care.
And I called them and they said, we can get you in about 3 weeks. Luckily, they had a few cancellations with some of their regular clients, and I was able to get in about a week and a half earlier. But I just can't imagine if somebody who was in a worse state than I was, that needed somebody, where do you go?
Luckily, there are several programs starting or growing up that aim to solve the dual problem of fragmentation and speed of care. One of those is being done by St. Cloud Hospital, whose behavioral health clinic sees thousands of patients a year.
If you go to your provider and say, I've had this sinus infection, it's been bothering me for 3 or 4 days, and they get you hooked up with an antibiotic or some treatment plan to address that, and you also say, I'm having some trouble sleeping and my mood's been a little bit off. They can say, well, hold on a second, let me go grab my colleague down the hall and I want you to chat with them because they're an expert in the sleep, mood, anxiety, depression, up, down world.
The DHS is also piloting 6 certified community behavioral health clinics, which, according to Assistant Commissioner Claire Wilson, are one-stop shops.
Clinics where you can go through the door and receive primary care, receive substance use disorder treatment, receive mental health treatment.
While those in the mental health care professions work on their end to fix the system, on our end we can fix the stigma. For Icago, what freed her of the stigma was a simple Facebook post.
Well, I was on Facebook and I typed up this long status about, what I did to myself and what I did to my loved ones.
So for those struggling with mental illness, ICAGO has some advice.
It's okay to get help. It's okay to talk about it.
As for the question of what can we do to help, well, share your stories. Donate to mental health organizations, participate in awareness walks and rallies, and above all, talk to and support one another, because life is worth it. For WJON, I'm Richard LaGill.